Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cattails, a Warrior Cats podcast, hosted by me, Coffee. If you just heard any noises in the background, that was my cat stepping on her little beanbag chair she likes to sit in. Maybe I'll bring her in as a guest on the podcast so she can give her commentary. Today, we are going through chapters 8 through 11 of Into the Wild. Last time, when we left off, Firepaw met Yellowfang, and he is probably going to get in trouble for not only feeding her, because as far as we know, she's an outsider, but also for feeding himself. So we're going to start chapter 8. Yellowfang growled in defiance at the approaching paw steps, but Firepaw could sense her panic. The she-cat struggled to her feet. "So long. Thanks for the meal." She tried to limp away on 3 legs and then winced in pain. "No! This leg stiffened up while I've been resting." She's so funny. She's trying to be sneaky, but gets, instant karma. It's too late for anyone to run. ThunderClan patrol pulls up. Firepaw recognizes Tigerclaw, Darkstripe, Willowpelt, and Bluestar. Firepaw smells Yellowfang's fear at the sight of them. Graypaw trails behind the patrol. Firepaw mewed a hasty greeting to his clan, but only Graypaw returned it. "Hi, Firepaw," he called out. "Silence," Tigerclaw growled. Firepaw glanced at Yellowfang and groaned inwardly. He could still smell the fear scent on her, but instead of cowering in submission, the scruffy creature was glaring in defiance. And it reminds me, so I work customer service right now. It's like when you just know a customer is going to start some and you can't outwardly be like, oh, you literally just have to sit there and be like, I know you're going to start some shit. That's what this interaction reminds me of. Bluestar says, "Firepaw, what have we here? An enemy warrior, and recently fed by the smell of you both." Her eyes burned into him, and Firepaw dropped his head. Firepaw starts to say she was weak and hungry. "And what about you? Was your hunger so bad that you had to feed yourself before you had gathered prey for your clan? I assume that you have a very good reason for breaking the warrior code." Now, this is kind of scary. This is worse than being yelled at. It's the "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed." Firepaw was not fooled by the leader's soft tone. Bluestar was furious, and rightly so. He crouched lower to the ground. Before he could speak, there was a loud hiss from Tigerclaw. "Once a kitty pet, always a kitty pet." Bluestar ignored Tigerclaw and looked instead at Yellowfang. Suddenly she looked surprised. Well, Firepaw, it seems you have captured us a ShadowClan cat, and one I know well." "You are ShadowClan's medicine cat, aren't you?" she meowed to Yellowfang. "What are you doing so far into ThunderClan territory?" "I was the ShadowClan medicine cat. Now I choose to travel alone," hissed Yellowfang. Firepaw listened, astonished. Had he heard her right? Yellowfang was a ShadowClan warrior? Her filthy condition must have masked her territorial scent. He might have enjoyed tackling her more if he'd known. It's funny. "Yellowfang," Tigerclaw meowed mockingly. "It looks like you have fallen on hard times if you can be beaten by an apprentice." Now Darkstripe spoke. "This old cat is no use to us. Let's kill her now. As for this kitty pet, he has broken the warrior code by feeding an enemy warrior. He should be punished." So basically, when the kitty pet breaks the code, it's bad, but when we do it, if we want to kill someone, it's okay. It's very U.S. government core. Bluestar says, "Keep your claws in, Darkstripe. All the clans speak of Yellowfang's bravery and wisdom. It may help us to hear what she has to say. Come, we'll take her back to camp. Then we'll decide what to do with her, and with Firepaw." "Can you walk?" she asked Yellowfang, "or do you need help?" "I've still got 3 good legs," Yellowfang snaps back. Firepaw saw that Yellowfang's eyes were glazed with pain, but she seemed determined not to show any weakness. He noticed a look of respect flicker across Bluestar's face before the ThunderClan leader turned and slowly led the way through the trees. I wonder what the look of respect is about. The other warriors took up positions on either side of Yellowfang, and the patrol moved off, carefully keeping pace with their lame prisoner. Lame is a very, very outdated word. This definitely dates this book to 2003. Firepaw and Graypaw fell into step at the back of the patrol. Firepaw says, "Have you heard of Yellowfang?" Graypaw replies, "A bit. Apparently she was a warrior before she became a medicine cat, which is unusual. I can't imagine her as a loner, though. She's lived her whole life in ShadowClan." Firepaw asks what a loner is, and Graypaw says, "A loner is a cat that isn't part of a clan or cared for by 2 legs. Tigerclaw says they are untrustworthy and selfish, which is immediately invalid since it comes from Tigerclaw. They often live around 2-leg dwellings, but belong to no one and catch their own food." Firepaw says, "I might end up a loner once Bluestar is finished with me." Graypaw says, "Bluestar is very fair. She won't throw you out. She certainly seems pleased to have such an important ShadowClan cat as a prisoner. I'm sure she's not going to make a fuss about your feeding the poor old mange bag." Firepaw says, "But they keep moaning about prey being scarce. Oh, why did I eat that rabbit?" "Well, yeah," Graypaw nudged his friend. "That was mouse-brained. You really broke the warrior code there, but no cat is perfect." And Firepaw is just very disappointed with himself. So they come back to camp with Yellowfang. Queens, kits, and elders crowded on either side. They peered curiously at Yellowfang as she was led into the camp. Some of the elders recognized the old she-cat. Word spread quickly through the clan that this was ShadowClan's medicine cat, and a steady jeering hum rose up around them. Yellowfang seemed deaf to the taunts. Firepaw couldn't help admiring the way she limped with dignity through the corridor of stares and insults. He knew she was in a great deal of pain, and hungry in spite of the rabbit he had caught for her. When the patrol reached the high rock, Bluestar nodded toward the dusty ground in front of it. Yellowfang followed the ThunderClan leader's silent command, sinking gratefully into the earth. Still ignoring the hostile stares around her, she began licking her wounded leg. Firepaw noticed Spotted Leaf emerge from her corner. She must have scented the presence of an injured cat in the camp. He watched the crowd part to let the young tortoiseshell through. Yellowfang glared at Spotted Leaf and hissed, "I know how to take care of my own wounds. I don't need your help." Spotted Leaf said nothing, but nodded respectfully and stepped back. Some hunting patrols return, and Firepaw is pacing around. Even though he ate some of that rabbit, he's still really hungry, and he really wants to eat, but he doesn't dare to take anything from the pile. He had broken the warrior code. He guessed that this meant he was forbidden his share in the fresh kill, and he would be right. He paused beside the high rock where Bluestar was sharing words with Tigerclaw. Uncertain, Firepaw looked to his leader for a signal that he was allowed to eat, but the gray cat and her senior warrior were busy murmuring at one another in low tones. Firepaw wondered if they were talking about him. Desperate to know his fate, he strained his ears to hear what they were saying. Tigerclaw's yowl sounded impatient. "It's just too dangerous to bring an enemy warrior into the heart of ThunderClan. Now that she knows the camp, even the youngest ShadowClan kit will hear of it. We will have to move." "Calm down, Tigerclaw," Bluestar purred. "Why should we move? Yellowfang says that she is traveling alone now. There is no reason for ShadowClan to hear of it." "Do you really believe that? What on earth was that foolish kitty pet thinking of?" Tigerclaw spat. "But think for a moment, Tigerclaw," mewed Bluestar. "Why would the ShadowClan medicine cat choose to leave her clan? You seem to be afraid that Yellowfang will share our clan's secrets with ShadowClan, but have you thought about how many ShadowClan secrets she might share with us?" Firepaw could see by the way Tigerclaw's fur began to flatten that Bluestar's words made sense. The warrior nodded briefly and then stalked off to take his share of the fresh kill. We can tell from this interaction that Bluestar is incredibly smart, and we can obviously see this before. She seems very competent and just a well-rounded cat, but this really shows how smart she is because she's aware enough that he hates ShadowClan, but she wants to stand firm on her decision to keep Yellowfang in the clan, and so she says something she knows he'll respond well to. As far as I can tell, this far in the book, Bluestar does not seem like a cat who, necessarily wants to know clan intel or is, very violent or aggressive. So when she says the thing about, ShadowClan secrets being shared with us, that could happen. Maybe Yellowfang might do that, but she might not. So she clearly just says this to get Tigerclaw to back off, and she words it very well. Bluestar remained where she was, and then she's looking across the clearing to where some of the kits are fighting in the dust. She stands up, begins to walk towards Firepaw, but she walks straight past him. She calls out to Frostfur, a pure white cat with dark blue eyes. She's a queen in the nursery, and then Bluestar just basically warns her that a fox was seen in the area and to pass it on to the other queens, and that all kits less than 6 months old should stay inside the camp until the fox is driven away. Frostfur thanks her. Firepaw's still pretty hungry, so he goes to sit with Graypaw and Ravenpaw, who are both eating some food. And then Firepaw tries to take a bite, and Tigerclaw comes up behind him and paws the mouse away and says, "Not for you. You didn't bring back any prey. The elders will eat your share. Take it to them." Firepaw looks over at Bluestar. She nods and says, "Do as he says." So he picks up the mouse and carries it across to Smallear, uses a lot of self-control to lay the prey down in front of Smallear, and then backs away. He's ultimately glad that he gobbled up the remains of the rabbit he had caught for Yellowfang, because now he can't eat again until tomorrow. Clearly, this has consequences, because he's just going to have to starve. So Firepaw goes over to Graypaw and Ravenpaw again. They finish eating. Graypaw asks Firepaw if Bluestar has mentioned his punishment yet. Firepaw says, "Not yet." And Bluestar calls the clan together. "Let all those cats old enough to catch their own prey join together for a meeting of our clan." So all the cats in the clan have finished eating at this time, and they all walk over to the high rock, where Bluestar is waiting to speak. Once they're all gathered, Bluestar says, "I'm sure you have all heard about the prisoner we brought back with us today, but there's something else you need to know." She glanced down at the rattled she-cat who lay very still beside the high rock. "Can you hear me from there?" she asked. "I may be old, but I'm not deaf yet," Yellowfang spat in reply. Bluestar ignored the prisoner's hostile tone and continued. "I'm afraid I have some very grave news. Today I traveled with a patrol into WindClan territory. The air was filled with the scent of ShadowClan. Almost every tree had been sprayed by ShadowClan warriors, and we met no WindClan cats even though we journeyed deep into their heartland." Her words were met with silence. Firepaw saw confusion in the faces of the clan cats. "Do you mean ShadowClan has chased them out?" called Smallier hesitantly. "We can't be sure," Bluestar meowed. "Certainly the scent of ShadowClan was everywhere. We found blood, too, and fur. There must have been a battle, though we found no bodies from either clan. So it's unsure, but this is... I think it's pretty obvious that, they got driven out." So a shocked yowl rose from the crowd in a single voice. Firepaw felt the cats around him stiffen with shock and fury. Never before had one clan driven another from its hunting grounds. "How can WindClan have been driven out?" One Eye croaked hoarsely. "ShadowClan is fierce, but WindClan is many. They have lived in the uplands for generations. Why have they been chased out now?" She shook her head anxiously, her whiskers trembling. "I don't know the answers to any of your questions," meowed Bluestar. "It is well known that ShadowClan has recently appointed a new leader following the death of Ragged Star. Their new leader, Broken Star, gave no hint of any threat when we met him at the last gathering." Broken Star. I wonder if he's evil. "Perhaps Yellowfang has answers?" snarled Darkstripe. "After all, she is of ShadowClan." "I am no traitor. Nothing would make me share the secrets of ShadowClan with a brute like you," growled Yellowfang, glaring aggressively at Darkstripe. The ThunderClan warrior moved forward, ears flat, eyes closed to slits, ready for a fight. "Stop!" yowled Bluestar. Darkstripe immediately halted in his tracks, even though Yellowfang goaded him on with blazing eyes and a furious hiss. "That's enough," Bluestar growled. "The situation is too serious for us to be fighting among ourselves. ThunderClan must prepare itself. From this moonrise onward, warriors will travel in larger groups. Other clan members will remain close to the camp. Patrols will travel the boundary edges more frequently, and all the kits must stay in the nursery." The cats below her nodded in agreement. Bluestar continued. "Our need for warriors is our greatest obstacle. We shall get around this by speeding up the training of our apprentices. They need to be ready even sooner to fight for our clan." Firepaw saw Dustpaw and Sandpaw exchange a thrilled glance. Graypaw was gazing up at Bluestar, his eyes wide with excitement. Ravenpaw just shuffled his paws anxiously. The black apprentice's wide eyes showed worry rather than excitement. Bluestar went on. "One young cat has been sharing mentors with Graypaw and Ravenpaw. By teaching him, I shall speed up the training of all 3 apprentices." She paused and looked down at her clan. "I shall take on Firepaw as my own apprentice." This is very surprising, and rereading this, I forgot that this happened. Firepaw opened his eyes wide in amazement. Bluestar was to be his mentor? Beside him, Graypaw gasped, unable to hide his surprise. "What an honor! It's been moons since Bluestar had an apprentice. Usually she trains only the kits of deputies." Then Tigerclaw says, "So Firepaw is to be rewarded, not punished, for feeding an enemy warrior when he should have been feeding his own clan." And wow, he's just directly throwing Firepaw under the bus in front of everyone. Bluestar says, "Firepaw is my apprentice now. I will deal with him. Yellowfang will be allowed to stay here until she has recovered her strength. We are warriors, not savages. She is to be treated with respect and courtesy." Darkstripe protests and says, "But the clan cannot support Yellowfang. We have too many mouths to feed already." "Yeah," Graypaw whispered into Firepaw's ear. "And some of them are bigger than others." I audibly laughed at this when I reread this. Graypaw should do stand up. "I don't need anyone to care for me," spat Yellowfang, "and I'll split open anyone who tries." "Friendly, isn't she?" Graypaw murmured. Wow, just back-to-back bangers from Graypaw in this chapter. Firepaw silently agrees, and then Bluestar continues and says, "We shall kill 2 prey with 1 blow, as it were. Firepaw, as punishment for breaking the warrior code, it will be your responsibility to care for Yellowfang. You will hunt for her and tend her wounds. You will fetch fresh bedding and clear away her dirt." "Yes, Bluestar," mewed Firepaw, his head bowed in submission. "Clear away her dirt," he thought to himself. Ugh. Now you know how we feel. Now you know how humans feel. Literally just yesterday, my cat threw up on my carpet, in the middle of my therapy session, because she was eating too fast. Dustpaw and Sandpaw are, pretty enthused by the idea of Firepaw's punishment. Dustpaw says, "Good idea. Firepaw had better be good at cracking fleas." "And hunting," added Sandpaw. "That sack of bones is going to need feeding up." "Enough," Bluestar interrupted them. "I hope Firepaw will find no shame in caring for Yellowfang. She is a healer, and she is his elder. For those reasons alone, he should respect her. And there is no humiliation in caring for another cat when it is unable to take care of itself. The meeting is over. I would like to speak to my senior warriors alone now." With that, she jumped down from the high rock and marched toward her den. The other clan cats began to move away from the high rock. 1 or 2 congratulated Firepaw on being chosen as Bluestar's apprentice. Others mockingly wished him luck looking after Yellowfang. Firepaw felt so dazed by Bluestar's announcement that he just nodded blankly. Longtail padded up to him. The V-shaped nick that Firepaw had cut into the tip of his ear still showed. The young warrior drew back his whiskers into an ugly snarl. "Well, I hope you'll think twice about bringing strays back into the camp next time," he sneered. "Like I said, outsiders always bring trouble." Which is just unnecessary. And again, Rage bait. Longtail is rage baiting. Like, that's literally his only purpose in this book, is to rage bait. But that's the end of chapter 8. I'm going to move on to chapter 9. So it picks up right where we left off. Graypaw says, "I'd go and see Yellowfang if I were you. She doesn't look very happy." Firepaw glanced over at the old she-cat. She was still lying beside the high rock. Graypaw was right. She was glaring at him. "Well, here goes," he mewed. "Wish me luck." "You'll need the whole of StarClan on your side for this one," answered Graypaw. "Call out if you need a hand. If she looks like she's gonna have you, I'll sneak up behind her and whack her on the head with a stiff rabbit." I would want Graypaw as a friend. Like, he's so funny. So Firepaw laughs at this, but his cheerful mood evaporates as he draws nearer to Yellowfang. She's clearly in a bad mood. She hisses at him and says, "Stop right there, kitty pet." Firepaw just sighs. He's hungry and tired. He doesn't want to do this. And so he just says, "You can call me what you like. I'm just following Blue Star's orders." "You are a kitty pet, though, aren't you?" Yellowfang wheezed. She's tired, too, Firepaw thought. There was less fire in her voice, although her spite was as strong as ever. "Your mother a kitty pet? Your father a kitty pet?" "It's giving, but where are you really from? Like, let's chill out." Yes, they were. Firepaw looked down at the ground, feeling resentment burn inside him. It was bad enough that members of his own clan still viewed him as an outsider. He certainly didn't have to answer to this foul-tempered prisoner. Yellowfang seemed to take his silence as an invitation to go on. "Kitty pet blood is not the same as warrior blood. Why don't you run home to your 2 legs now instead of looking after me? It's humiliating being fussed over by a low-born cat like you." Not the "go back to your country"? This is like the worst case of xenophobia I've seen in this book. And, I mean, the xenophobia is pretty bad in this book already. But this is crazy. Firepaw runs out of patience. He snarls, "You'd still feel humiliated if I were warrior-born. You'd feel ashamed whether I was a precious she-cat from your own clan or a wretched 2-leg that had picked you up off the ground. It's the fact that you need to rely on any cat that you find so humiliating." Yellowfang stared at him, her orange eyes very wide. Firepaw carried on fiercely. "You're just going to have to get used to being cared for until you are well enough to look after yourself, you spiteful old bone bag." Ended her. She's cooked. He stopped as Yellowfang began to make a low, harsh wheezing sound. Alarmed, Firepaw took a step toward her. The she-cat was trembling all over, and her eyes had narrowed into tiny slits. Was she having some kind of a fit? "Look, I didn't mean," he began, before he suddenly realized that she was laughing. I'm going to attempt to do a noise again, because it's written out. "Meow, meow, meow," she mewled, a purr rumbling up from deep inside her chest. "I'm sorry, guys, I'm sorry. This is literally written in the book. It's literally written in the book. I have to make cat noises." Firepaw doesn't know what to do. The Yellowfang says, "You have spirit, kitty pet. Now I'm tired and my leg hurts. I need sleep and something to put on this wound. Go and find that pretty little medicine cat of yours and ask her for some herbs. I think you'll find a goldenrod poultice would help. And while you're at it, I wouldn't mind a few poppy seeds to chew on. The pain is killing me." Now, if I remember correctly, poppy seeds are opioids, basically. They're used to make opioids. Or painkillers. She's basically asking for opioids. And I guess they're not banned in the warrior cat's world. So Firepaw goes to Spotted Leaf's den. He had never been in this part of the camp before. With his ears pricked, he padded through a cool green tunnel of ferns that led into a small grassy clearing. A tall rock stood at one side, split down the middle by a crack wide enough for a cat to make its den inside. Out of this opening trotted Spotted Leaf. As usual, she looked bright-eyed and friendly, her dappled coat gleaming with 100 shades of amber and brown. Firepaw shyly mewed a greeting and reeled off Yellowfang's list of herbs and seeds. "I've got most of those in my den," replied Spotted Leaf. "I'll fetch some marigold leaves, too. If she dresses her wound with that, it'll keep off any infection. Wait here." "Thanks," Firepaw mewed as the medicine cat disappeared back into her den. He strained his eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of her inside. But the den was too dark to see anything. He could only hear the sound of rustling and smell the heady scents of unfamiliar herbs. Spotted Leaf emerged from the gloom and dropped a bundle folded in leaves by Firepaw's feet. "Tell Yellowfang to go easy on the poppy seeds. I don't want her to deaden the pain entirely. A little pain can be useful, as it will help me judge how well she is healing." Firepaw says thanks, and brings the herbs back to Yellowfang, but he's very aware of Tiger Claw watching him, which is a little bit creepy. And then we have a time skip to 3 days later. Firepaw wakes Graypaw up for training, and then wakes Ravenpaw up, and Ravenpaw immediately opens his eyes and leaps to his feet. "What is it?" he mused, looking around wildly. Firepaw says, "Calm down, it's time for training soon." The morning was warm. Firepaw could see a deep blue sky through the leaves and branches that overhung the camp. Today, however, a heavy dew glistened on the fern fronds and sparkled on the grass. Firepaw sniffed the air. Greenleaf was drawing to a close, and soon it would start to feel colder. He lay down and rolled in the earth beside the tree stump, stretching his legs and tipping his head back to rub it on the cool ground. Then he flipped over onto his side and looked across the clearing to see if Yellowfang was awake yet. She had been giving a resting place at the other end of the fallen tree where the elders gathered to eat. Her nest lay tucked against its mossy trunk, out of hearing of the elders, but in full view of the warrior's den across the clearing. Firepaw could just see a mound of pale gray fur, rising and falling in time to a gentle rumble of sleep. So all the apprentices leave their den. Dustpaw says, "Another day looking after that mangy old flea bag, eh, Firepaw? I bet you wish you were out training with us." Firepaw ignores him. Graypaw says, "Don't worry, Firepaw. Bluestar will have you back in training before long." "Perhaps she thinks the kitty pet is better off staying in camp, tending to the sick," mewed Sandpaw rudely, tossing her sleek ginger head and throwing him a scornful look. Firepaw ignores this again. I think he's had enough of the xenophobic comments, so he just asked Sandpaw what Whitestorm is teaching her today, and she says, "They're doing battle training. He's going to teach me how a real warrior fights." Graypaw says, "Lionheart's taking me to the Great Sycamore to practice my climbing. I'd best go. He'll be waiting." Firepaw wants to come with them to the top of the ravine, because he has to catch breakfast for Yellowfang, and then he says, "Coming, Ravenpaw? Tigerclaw must have something planned for you." Ravenpaw sighed and nodded, then followed Graypaw and Firepaw as they trotted out of the camp. Even though his injury was completely healed, he still seemed to have little enthusiasm for warrior training. Yeah, because his mentor is abusive. I wouldn't want to train either. There's another time skip. Firepaw brings back a mouse and a chaffinch, which is, I believe, a small bird, for Yellowfang. She gulps down the food and says, "The base of my tail itches like fury, but I can't reach it. Give it a wash, will you?" With an inward shudder, Firepaw crouches down and sets to work. As he cracked the plump fleas between his teeth, he noticed a gang of small kits tumbling in the dusty earth nearby. They were mauling each other and play fighting, sometimes quite viciously. Yellowfang, who had closed her eyes as Firepaw groomed her, half opened one eye to observe the kits as they played. To his surprise, Firepaw felt her spine stiffen beneath his teeth. He listened for a moment to the tiny yelps and squeaks of the kits. "Feel my teeth, Broken Star," mewed one small tabby. He leaped onto the back of a little gray and white kit, who was pretending to be the Shadow Clan leader. The two kits bundled toward the high rock. Suddenly, the gray and white kit gave a mighty heave and flung the tabby from his back. With a startled squeak, the little tabby cannoned into Yellowfang's side. Instantly, the old she-cat leaped to her feet, fur on end, spitting violently. "Stay away from me, you scrap of fur!" she hissed. The tabby kit took one look at the furious cat, turned tail, and ran. He hid himself behind a tabby queen, who was staring furiously across the clearing at Yellowfang. The gray and white kit froze where he stood. Then, paw by paw, he cautiously backed away toward the safety of the nursery. Yellowfang's reaction shocked Firepaw. He thought he'd seen her at her most vicious when they fought after their first meeting, but her eyes burned with a new rage now. "I think the kits are finding it hard being confined to camp," he mewed cautiously. "They're getting restless." Yellowfang says, "I don't care how restless they are, just keep them away from me." "Don't you like kits?" Firepaw asked, curious in spite of himself. "Did you never have kits of your own?" "Don't you know medicine cats don't have kits?" hissed Yellowfang furiously. "But I heard you were a warrior before that," Firepaw ventured. "I have no kits," Yellowfang spat. She's a little too defensive about this. That's all I'm gonna say. She snatched her tail away from him and sat up. Anyway, her voice suddenly lowered, and she sounded almost wistful. "Accidents seem to happen to kits when I'm around them. There's obviously some lore here, with her and kits. I don't know what it is." Her orange eyes clouded with emotion. She laid her chin flat on her forepaws and stared ahead. Firepaw watched her shoulders sink as she released a long, silent sigh. Firepaw's curious about this. Yellowfang seems to switch from mood to mood very quickly. He goes on with the grooming, says there's a couple of ticks I couldn't pull out. Yellowfang says, "I should hope you didn't even try, you idiot. I don't want any tick heads embedded in my rear, thank you very much. Ask Spottedly for a little mouse bile to rub on them. A splash of that in their breathing holes and they'll soon loosen their grip." "I'll get some now," Firepaw offered. He was glad of a chance to get away from the grumpy cat for a while, and it was certainly no hardship to go and see Spottedleaf again. As he walks towards Spottedleaf's den, he notices that cats cross the clearing around him, carrying sticks and twigs in their teeth. While he had been grooming Yellowfang, the camp had grown active. It had been like this every day since Bluestar had announced WindClan's disappearance. The queens were weaving twigs and leaves into a dense green wall around the sides of the nursery, making sure that the narrow entrance was the only way in and out of the bramble patch. Other cats were working at the edges of the camp, filling in any spaces in the thick undergrowth. Even the elders were busy, scraping out a hole in the ground. Warriors filed steadily past, piling pieces of fresh kill beside them, ready to be stored inside the newly dug hole. There was an air of quiet concentration, a determination to make the clan as secure and well supplied as possible. If ShadowClan made a move on their territory, ThunderClan would shelter inside the camp. They would not let themselves be driven from their hunting grounds as easily as WindClan had been. Darkstripe, Longtail, Willowpelt, and Dustpaw were waiting silently at the camp entrance. Their eyes were fixed on the opening to the gorse tunnel. A patrol was just returning, dusty and paw-sore. As soon as the warriors entered the camp, Darkstripe and his companions approached and exchanged words with them. Then they slipped quickly out of the camp. ThunderClan's borders were not being left unguarded for a moment. So, this is obviously very serious business. To Firepaw, Enters Spotted Leaf's den. He asks her for some mouse bile. She says, in a moment. She's mixing some herbs together. Firepaw asks, busy? Spotted Leaf says, I want to be prepared for any casualties. She looks up at him with her amber eyes. Firepaw meets her gaze, then looks away, an uncomfortable feeling prickling his fur. And Spotted Leaf turns her attention back to the herbs. So she gets him the mouse bile. She brings him a small wad of moss dangling on the end of a thin strip of bark. And she says, the moss is soaked in bile. Don't get any in your mouth or you'll have a foul taste for days. Press it onto the ticks and then wash your paws. In a stream, not with your tongue. Firepaw nodded and trotted back to Yellowfang, feeling suddenly cheerful and tingling with energy. Ooh! He has a crush! You can't do that, buddy. Medicine cats can't have mates. Or kids. Which is honestly kind of a stupid rule now that I'm thinking about it. Like, oh, it might get in the way of caring for your clan. Okay, if you're a warrior, the same thing applies. What if you can't hunt or fight for your clan? That's one less cat hunting or fighting for your clan. I don't know. But I guess, if you're a doctor and you have kids to take care of, I guess it would be a little harder. Anyway, Firepaw gets back to Yellowfang. He gets the ticks off her, and he clears away her dirt, and then he is trying to get to a stream to rinse his paws. Halftail, one of the elders, stops him and says, don't come back without fresh kill, we need as much as we can find. So he finds the stream that he hunted in previously, and he jumps into the water, and he hears a rustle in the bushes. What are you doing in there? Graypaw and Ravenpaw were standing looking at him as if he were mad. Mouse bile. Firepaw grimaced. Don't ask. Where are Lionheart and Tigerclaw? Graypaw says, they've gone to join the next patrol. They ordered us to spend the rest of the afternoon hunting. Firepaw says, Halftail told me the same thing. Everyone's busy back at camp. You'd think we were about to be attacked at any moment. Who says we won't be? Mewed Ravenpaw, his eyes flicking from side to side as if he expected an enemy patrol to leap out of the bushes at any time. Firepaw notices they've caught a good amount of prey. And then Graypaw says, yep, we've still got the rest of the afternoon to hunt. Do you want to join us? And Firepaw says, you bet. And so they catch a ton of prey. And they get back to camp, and Lionheart praises them. And he says that they can take some back and have a little feast of their own. Tigerclaw says, I hope you've not been neglecting Yellowfang with all this hunting, Firepaw. And Firepaw shakes his head. He's been taking good care of her. He obeyed the warrior code this time and hadn't eaten a single thing while he was hunting for the clan. Dustpaw and Sandpaw are still out on patrol, and so they're glad to have the peace and quiet. Hey, guess what? Mewed Graypaw suddenly. Ravenpaw managed to squeeze a compliment out of old Tigerclaw this morning. Really? Firepaw gasped. What on earth did you do to please Tigerclaw? Fly? Well, Ravenpaw began shyly, looking at his paws. I caught a crow. How'd you manage that? Firepaw mewed, impressed. It was an old one, Ravenpaw admitted modestly. But it was huge, added Graypaw. Even Tigerclaw couldn't find fault with that. He's been in such a bad mood since Bluestar took you on as her apprentice. He licked his paw thoughtfully for a moment. Hang on, make that since Lionheart was made deputy. And then Ravenpaw says, he's just worried about ShadowClan and the extra patrols. You should try not to annoy him. Is Ravenpaw making excuses for him? There's a loud yowl from the other side of the clearing. Firepaw realizes he forgot to feed Yellowfang, and Graypaw offers to take her food. And Firepaw says, no, I'd better do it. This is my punishment. Graypaw argues that no one will notice. They're all busy eating. You know me, quiet as a mouse, quick as a fish. I don't really think that's true. But he says, wait here. And Firepaw lets his friend do it. So Graypaw picks out 2 mice and begins to pad across the clearing towards Yellowfang. Stop, Graypaw. A loud growl rumbled from the entrance to the warrior's den. Tigerclaw strode out and marched over to Graypaw. Where are you taking those mice? He demanded. With a sinking feeling in his stomach, Firepaw watched, helpless, from the tree stump. Beside him, Ravenpaw froze mid-chew and crouched over his meal with his eyes wider than ever. Graypaw dropped the mice and shuffled his paws uncomfortably. Not helping young Firepaw by feeding that greedy traitor over there, are you? Firepaw watched Graypaw study his paws for a moment. Finally, he replied, I was just feeling hungry. I was gonna take them off and eat them by myself. If I let that pair get a look in, he glanced at Firepaw and Ravenpaw, they'll leave me with nothing but bones and fur. Oh, really? Mewed Tigerclaw. Well, if you're so hungry, you might as well eat them here and now. But, Graypaw began, looking up at the senior warrior in alarm. Now, growled Tigerclaw. Graypaw bent his head quickly and began to eat the mice. He demolished the first one in a couple of bites and swallowed it quickly. The second mouse took longer for him to eat. Firepaw thought he'd never manage to swallow it, and his own stomach clenched in sympathy. But eventually Graypaw gave a final difficult gulp and the last bit of mouse disappeared. Better now? Asked Tigerclaw, his voice smooth with mock sympathy. Much, replied Graypaw, stifling a burp. Tigerclaw just literally wasted precious prey. He doesn't get in trouble for this. Like, okay, yeah, Graypaw lied, sure. Tigerclaw could have solved this by being like, I know what you're doing, go take it to Firepaw, or I'm gonna report you to Bluestar, or something like that. Like, he could have done that. He didn't have to waste prey like that. So, just another abusive tactic, I guess. Graypaw slinks back. Firepaw says, "Thank you, that was quick thinking." The noise of Yellowfang's yowl rose into the air once more. Firepaw sighed and got to his paws. He would make sure he took her enough to see her through the night. He wanted to turn in early. His stomach was full and his paws were tired. "Are you okay, Graypaw?" he asked as he turned to leave. "Meow," moaned Graypaw. He was hunched into a low crouch, squinting with pain. "I've eaten too much." "Go and see Spotted Leaf," Firepaw suggested. "I'm sure she'll find something to help." "I hope so," mewed Graypaw, tottering slowly away. Firepaw watched him go until another angry yowl from Yellowfang sent him sprinting across the clearing. That's the end of Chapter 9. Now we're on Chapter 10. Firepaw wakes up and it's raining. He goes to see Yellowfang. She says, "My bones ache this morning. Has it been raining all night?" Firepaw says, "Yes. Your bedding is soaking wet. Why don't you move nearer to the nursery? It's more sheltered there." Yellowfang says, "What, and be kept awake all night by those mewling kids? I'd rather get wet." And honestly, she's real for that. I also don't like kids. Now, we don't know her reasoning for not liking kids. Hopefully, it seems like there might be one, but we don't know that yet. But she might just dislike kids to dislike kids, and honestly, I do too. They're loud and annoying, so she's real for that. So Firepaw says, "Then at least let me fetch you some dry bedding." She says, "Thank you." Firepaw felt stunned. He wondered if Yellowfang was feeling alright. It was the first time she had thanked him for anything, and the first time she had not called him kitty pet. "Well, don't just stand there like a startled squirrel. Go and fetch some moss," she snapped. Firepaw's whiskers twitched with amusement. This was more like the Yellowfang he was used to. He nodded and sprinted off. He runs into Speckletail. He asks her if she's on her way to see Yellowfang. Speckletail says, "What would I want with that unnatural creature?" Kinda crazy and uncalled for. So Speckletail sends him to see Bluestar. Bluestar asks how Yellowfang is. Firepaw tells her about the wet bedding, and he's gonna fetch her more. Bluestar says she'll get one of the queens to see to that. She asks if she's fit enough to hunt for herself yet. Firepaw says, "I don't think so, but she can walk well enough now." Bluestar says, "I see." Then she says, "It's time for you to return to your training, Firepaw, but you'll need to work hard to make up for time you have lost." "Great! Thank you, Bluestar," Firepaw stammered. And then she says, "He'll go out with Tigerclaw, Graypaw, and Ravenpaw this morning. I've asked Tigerclaw to assess the warrior skills of all our apprentices. Don't worry about Yellowfang. I'll make sure someone sees to her while you're gone. Now join your companions. I expect they're waiting for you." Bluestar was right. Graypaw and Ravenpaw were both waiting for him by their favorite tree stump. Graypaw looked stiff and uncomfortable, his long fur clumped by the dampness of the air. Ravenpaw was pacing around the tree stump, lost in thought, the white tip of his tail twitching. "So you're joining us today," Graypaw called as Firepaw approached. "Someday, huh?" He shook himself roughly to get rid of the clinging wetness. "Yes, Bluestar told me that Tigerclaw is going to assess us today. Are Sandpaw and Dustpaw coming too?" "Whitestorm and Darkstripe took them out on warrior patrol. I suppose Tigerclaw is going to look at them later," Graypaw answered. "Come on, we should get going," urged Ravenpaw. He had stopped pacing and now hovered beside them anxiously. "Fine by me," mewed Graypaw. "Hopefully some exercise will warm me up a bit." The three cats trotted through the gorse track and out of the camp. They hurried to the sandy hollow. Tigerclaw had not arrived, so they hung around in the shelter of a pine tree, their fur fluffed up against the chill. "Are you worried about the assessment?" Firepaw asked Ravenpaw, as the young cat padded backward and forward with quick, nervous paw steps. "There's no need to be. You're Tigerclaw's apprentice, after all. When he reports back to Bluestar, he's going to want to tell her how good you are." "You can never tell with Tigerclaw," mewed Ravenpaw, still pacing. "For goodness sake, sit down," Graypaw grumbled. "At this rate, you'll be worn out before we begin. Tigerclaw takes a while to get there, but he does. He says Lionheart and I have spent the last few weeks trying to teach you how to hunt decently. Today you'll have a chance to show me how much you have learned. Each of you will take a different route and hunt as much prey as possible, and whatever you catch will be added to the supplies in the camp. Ravenpaw, you'll follow the trail beyond the Great Sycamore as far as the Snake Rocks. That should be easy enough for your pitiful skills. Unnecessary. You, Graypaw, will take the route along the stream as far as the Thunderpath." "Great," mewed Graypaw. "Wet paws for me." Tigerclaw's stare silenced him. He's still so funny. "And finally you, Firepaw. What a shame your great mentor couldn't be here today to witness your performance for herself. You shall take the route through the tall pines, past the tree-cut place to the woods beyond. And remember, I shall be watching all of you." They all run off. Graypaw says, "I don't know why you think Snake Rocks is an easy route. The place is crawling with adders. Birds and mice stay away from there because there's so many snakes." Firepaw agrees and says Ravenpaw will have to spend his whole time trying not to get bitten. I think Tigerclaw did this on purpose, because he hates Ravenpaw for no reason. Graypaw says, "He'll be okay. Not even Adder would be fast enough to catch Ravenpaw at the moment. He's so jumpy. I better get going. See you back here later on. Good luck." Firepaw heads in the direction of the tall pines. It feels weird because he's going back in the direction of the Two-Leg place he had been raised in. He goes deeper and deeper, until finally he recognized sounds and scents familiar from his old watching place on the fence post and knew instantly where he was. These were the woods that bordered the two-leg place. He must be very close to his old home now. He could hear a group of two-legs playing in the woods, so he's obviously very close to the two-leg place now. He avoids them because he knows they'll scare the prey off. He's staying alert and watchful, not just for two-legs, but Tiger Claw might also be nearby, and he doesn't know if he's watching him or not. He senses movement. It's not Tiger Claw, but it's a cat, but not a ThunderClan cat. He realizes he's going to have to chase out an intruder. He tracks the cat. He notices the cat is black and white, but he doesn't recognize the cat beyond that. And he starts chasing the cat. He realizes it's a kitty pet, and so he gets pretty excited about that, and he leaps on the cat, but he releases his grip, and the black and white cat looks up at him. Firepaw feels disgusted at the intruder's easy surrender. The soft, plump house cat, with its round eyes and narrow face, looked very different from the lean, broad-headed cats Firepaw lived with now, and yet something about this cat seemed familiar. Firepaw stared harder. He sniffed, drawing in the other cat's scent. I don't recognize the smell, he thought, searching his memory. Then it came to him. Smudge! He meowed out loud. How do you know my name? Stammered Smudge, still crouching. It's me, Firepaw meowed. The house cat looked confused. We were kittens together. I lived in the garden next to you. Rusty? Mewed Smudge in disbelief. Is that you? Did you find the wildcats again? Or are you living with new housefolk? You must be, if you're still alive. I'm called Firepaw now. Smudge says, Firepaw? Well, Firepaw, it looks like your new housefolk don't feed you enough. You certainly weren't this scrawny last time we met. Firepaw replies, I don't need two legs to feed me. I've got a whole forest of food to eat. Two legs? Housefolk. That's what the clans call them. Smudge is bewildered. You mean you're really living with the wildcats? Yes, Firepaw paused. You know, you smell different. Unfamiliar. Unfamiliar? He sniffed. I suppose you're used to the smell of those wildcats now. Firepaw shook his head as if to clear his mind. But we were kittens together. I should know your smell like I'd know the smell of my birth mother. Then Firepaw remembered. Smudge had passed 6 moons. No wonder he looked so soft and fat and smelled so strange. You've been to the cutter, he gasped. I mean, the vet. Smudge shrugged his plump black shoulders. So? He mewed. Firepaw was speechless. So Blue Star was right. This is referring to Blue Star's description of cats who have been to the vet is that they're lazy, uncaring, etc. Once they visit the cutter. And apparently she was right. So Smudge asks, come on then, what's it like living wild? Is it as good as you thought it'd be? Firepaw thought for a moment. About last night, sleeping in a damp den. He thought about Mouse Bile and clearing away Yellowfang's dirt, and trying to please both Lionheart and Tiger Claw at once during training. He remembered the teasing he suffered about his kitty pet blood. Then he remembered the thrill of his first catch, of charging through the forest in pursuit of a squirrel, and of warm evenings beneath the stars sharing tongues with his friends. I know who I am now, he meowed simply. I think this is a good answer. Smudge is confused, but he says, I should be getting home. Mealtime soon. Go carefully, Smudge. Firepaw leaned forward and gave his old friend an affectionate lick between the ears. Smudge nuzzled him in return. And stay alert. There may be another cat in the area who is not as fond of kitty pets. I mean house cats, as I am. Smudge says goodbye. I'll tell everyone at home that you're okay. Firepaw says, bye, Smudge. Enjoy your meal. He watched the white tip of Smudge's tail disappear over the edge of the tree. In the distance, he could hear the rattle of dried food being shaken and a two-legged voice calling. Firepaw turned, his tail high, and started back towards his own home, sniffing the air as he went. I'll find a finch or two here, he decided. Then I'll catch something else on the way back through the pines. He felt bursting with energy after meeting Smudge and realizing just how lucky he was to live in the clan. He looked up at the branches above him and began to stalk silently across the forest floor, every sense alert. Now he just needed to impress Blue Star and Tiger Claw, and the day would be perfect. That's the end of Chapter 10. We're going to move on to Chapter 11, which is our last chapter for today. So Firepaw gets done with his hunting. He returns with a chaffinch and drops it in front of Tiger Claw in the hollow. Tiger Claw says he's the first one back. Firepaw says, yeah, but I've got loads more prey to fetch. I buried it back. I know exactly what you did, Tiger Claw growled. I've been watching you. So Firepaw might be in trouble again. Graypaw returns. He caught a squirrel. He says, yuck, squirrels are too furry. I'll be picking hairs out of my teeth all evening. Tiger Claw doesn't pay attention to this, and he says, Ravenpaw's late. We'll give him a bit longer and then return to camp. Firepaw asks, but what if he's been bitten by an adder? Then it's his own fault, Tiger Claw replied coldly. There's no room for fools in ThunderClan. Literally zero sympathy. Sociopath behavior. So they wait a bit for Ravenpaw. Firepaw was the first to scent Ravenpaw's arrival. He jumped to his paws as the black cat leaped into the clearing, looking unusually pleased with himself. Dangling from his mouth was the long, diamond-patterned body of an adder. Ravenpaw, are you okay? Firepaw called. Hey, meowed Graypaw, rushing forward to admire Ravenpaw's catch. Did that bite you? I was too quick for it, Ravenpaw purred loudly. Then he caught Tiger Claw's eye and fell silent. Tiger Claw fixed all 3 excited apprentices with a cold stare. Come on, he said shortly. Let's collect the rest of your prey and get back to camp. Firepaw, Graypaw, and Ravenpaw entered the camp, strolling behind Tigerclaw. Their impressive day's catch hung from their mouths, although Ravenpaw kept tripping over his dead snake. As they emerged from the gorse into the camp, a group of young kits scrambled out of the nursery to watch them pass. "Look!" Firepaw heard one of them say. "Apprentices, just back from hunting." He recognized the little tabby Yellowfang had hissed at the day before. Sitting next to him was a fluffy gray kit, no more than 2 moons old. A tiny black kit and a small tortoiseshell stood beside them. "Isn't that the kitty pet Firepaw?" squeaked the gray kit. "Yeah, look at his orange fur," mewed the black one. "They say he's a good hunter," the tortoiseshell added. "He looks a bit like Lionheart. Do you suppose he's as good as him?" "I can't wait to start my training," mewed the tabby. "I'm going to be the best warrior ThunderClan has ever seen." Firepaw feels proud at the kit's admiring comments. He follows his 2 friends into the clearing. Graypaw is still admiring Ravenpaw's adder catch. Ravenpaw asks what he should do with it. Graypaw asks, "Can you eat adders?" "Trust you to think of your stomach," Firepaw joked, butting Graypaw with his head, basically calling him big and greedy, which is really funny. Ravenpaw says, "I don't want to eat it. My mouth tastes pretty foul after carrying it back." So Graypaw suggests they put it on the tree stump so Dustpaw and Sandpaw can see it when they get back. So they put the snake on the tree stump, showing off his catch, and then they eat and talk. "I wonder who Bluestar will choose to go to the gathering?" Firepaw meowed. "It'll be full moon tomorrow." "Sandpaw and Dustpaw have been twice already," replied Graypaw. "Perhaps Bluestar will choose one of us this time," mewed Firepaw. "After all, we've been training for almost 3 moons now." "But Sandpaw and Dustpaw are still the eldest apprentices," Ravenpaw pointed out. Firepaw nodded. "And this gathering will be an important one. It'll be the first time the clans have met since WindClan disappeared. No cat knows what ShadowClan is going to say about it." Tigerclaw's low meow interrupted them. "You are right, youngster." The warrior had strolled up to them unnoticed. "By the way, Firepaw," he added smoothly, "Bluestar wants to see you." Firepaw looked up, startled. Why would Bluestar want to see him? "Now, if you can spare the time," Tigerclaw meowed. Firepaw jumped up immediately and bounded across the clearing toward Bluestar's den. Bluestar was sitting outside, her tail flicking restlessly back and forth. When she saw Firepaw, she stood up and looked steadily down at him. "Tigerclaw has told me that he saw you talking with a cat from the Two-Leg place today," she meowed quietly. "But," Firepaw began, "he said that you began by fighting with this cat but ended up sharing tongues with it." "That's true," Firepaw admitted, feeling his fur prickle defensively. "But he was an old friend. We grew up together." He paused and swallowed. "When I was a kitty pet." Bluestar looked at him for a long moment. "Do you miss your old life, Firepaw?" she asked. "Think carefully now." "No." How can Bluestar think that? Firepaw wondered. His head was spinning. What was Bluestar trying to make him say? "Do you wish to leave the clan?" "Of course not!" Firepaw was shocked by her question. Bluestar didn't seem to hear the passion in his answer. She shook her head, looking suddenly old and tired. "I won't judge you if you leave us, Firepaw. Perhaps I expected too much of you. Perhaps my judgment has been clouded by the clan's need for new warriors." She's either testing me here, or she's genuinely just, really tired from her leader duties and trying to keep the clan together. Panic swept through Firepaw at the thought of leaving the clan forever. "But my place is here. This is my home," he protested. "I need more than that, Firepaw. I need to be able to trust in your loyalty to ThunderClan, especially now that it looks like ShadowClan is planning an attack. We don't have room for anyone who isn't sure whether their heart lies in the past or the present." Firepaw took a deep breath and chose his next words carefully. "When I saw Smudge today, that's the house cat Tigerclaw saw me talking with, I saw what life would have been like if I'd stayed with the Two Legs. I felt happy that I had not stayed. I was proud I left." He held Bluestar's gaze without flinching. "Meeting Smudge made me certain I made the right decision. I could never have been satisfied with the soft life of a kitty pet." Bluestar looked closely at him for a moment, her eyes narrow. Then she nodded. "Very well," she says. "I believe you." Firepaw dipped his head respectfully and let out a silent sigh of relief. "I spoke to Yellowfang earlier," meowed Bluestar in a lighter tone. "She thinks a lot of you. She's a wise old she-cat, you know. And I expect she wasn't always bad-tempered. Indeed, I think that I could grow to like her." Firepaw felt an unexpected glow of pleasure at these words. Maybe, in caring for Yellowfang, his admiration for her had grown into affection, despite the she-cat's ill temper. Whatever the reason, he was glad Bluestar liked her too. "But there's something about her that I don't trust," Bluestar went on quietly. "She will stay with ThunderClan for now, but remain as a prisoner. The queens will care for her. You must concentrate on your training." I wonder if Bluestar doesn't trust her because of her reaction to the kits playing the other day. Firepaw nodded and waited to be dismissed, but Bluestar hadn't finished. "Firepaw, although you showed bad judgment today in talking to a house cat, Tigerclaw was impressed by your hunting skills. In fact, he reported that you all did well. I am pleased with your progress. You will come to the gathering, all 3 of you." Firepaw could hardly stand still. His body tingled with excitement. "The gathering!" "What about Sandpaw and Dustpaw?" he mewed. "They will remain behind and guard the camp," replied Bluestar. "Now you may go." She flicked her long tail to show he was dismissed and returned to her grooming. So Firepaw gets back from talking with Bluestar. Graypaw and Ravenpaw are waiting for him. "Well," Graypaw demanded, "what did she say?" "Tigerclaw told us you'd been sharing tongues with a kitty pet this morning," burst out Ravenpaw. "Are you in trouble?"
No, although Bluestar wasn't pleased, Firepaw admitted. She thought I might want to leave ThunderClan. You don't, do you? Asked Ravenpaw. Of course he doesn't, mewed Graypaw. Firepaw gave Graypaw an affectionate swipe. Yeah, you'd hate that. You need me to catch mice for you. All you can catch these days are hairy old squirrels. I love their interactions and their dynamic so much. You'll never guess what else she said. We're going to the gathering. And Graypaw lets out a yowl of delight and bounded up onto the tree stump. One of his back paws knocked the adder flying. It hit Ravenpaw on the head and wrapped itself around his neck. Ravenpaw says, watch it. And then Firepaw teases him and says, scared it might try to bite you? And Ravenpaw says, some snake you'd make. And then Ravenpaw, Firepaw, and Graypaw all start play fighting together in a big bundle, which is very sweet and very cute. But then they stop. Are Sandpaw and Dustpaw coming too? Puffed Graypaw. Nope, Firepaw replied, unable to disguise the note of triumph in his voice. They have to stay behind and guard the camp. Oh, let me tell them, begged Graypaw. I can't wait to see the looks on their faces. He's so real. Graypaw is such a hater. Me neither, Firepaw agreed. I can't believe we're going instead of them, especially after Tigerclaw saw me with Smudge today. That was just bad luck, answered Graypaw. We all caught a load of prey in the assessment. That must be what decided it. I wonder what the gathering will be like, mewed Ravenpaw. It'll be fantastic, Graypaw replied confidently. I bet all the great warriors will be there. Clawface, Stonefur... But Firepaw wasn't listening anymore. Instead, he found himself thinking about Tigerclaw and Smudge. Graypaw was right. It was bad luck that the Great Warrior had been observing him when he had met his old friend. Why couldn't he have been watching Graypaw or Ravenpaw instead? In fact, it was bad luck that Tigerclaw had sent him so near the two-leg place at all. Suddenly a dark thought entered Firepaw's mind. Why had Tigerclaw sent him so near his old haunts? Had he wanted to test him? Could it be the Great Dark Warrior didn't trust his loyalty to ThunderClan? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Tigerclaw doesn't like Firepaw, but I think that's, yeah. Very, very interesting. I think Tigerclaw probably set him up. Was trying to set him up to fail. Very, very interesting. But that is the end of Chapter 11, and that is going to be where we end our episode today. Thank you for joining me. Like I said, my name is Coffee. I'm your host. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky. It's at NotCoffee or at NotCoffee1. And the O's are zeros, so you can follow me there. Follow Cattails on socials. We have Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter, so you can get updated on when each new episode is out. And you can find Cattails on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Search up Cattails, a Warrior Cats podcast. Tails spelled T-A-L-E-S. And I'll see you guys next time on the next episode, where we find out what the gathering is like. It'll be very interesting. And may StarClan light your path.